So, welcome to Pitch Deck Clinic with the amazing Ray from free.co.uk. So, before we dive into the pitch deck, which is going to be something awesome, something different, something to challenge what pitch decks are, let me introduce you to Ray. So, Ray, tell us a little bit in your own words about free.co.uk. And also what the proposition is, what the story is, and what you're looking for from today's pitch deck session.
Cool. So hi, I'm Ray. I previously founded Unmortgage, where I secured a £500 million partnership with Allianz and raised at the time the largest seed round in Europe ever of £10 million. And Unmortgage was helping people buy a home without a mortgage. And so we were raising equity capital from pension funds to buy homes in partnership with reluctant renters. But ultimately, our customers did want to get a mortgage, and most people want to buy with a mortgage. There's £250 billion of homes bought with a mortgage every year. And so it struck me as odd that everybody in the UK is obsessed with talking about buying and selling homes. You know, it's dinner table conversation. But all these VC-backed startups around mortgages are targeting buyers and saying, come to us for a mortgage. And we don't talk about mortgages around the dinner table. Like we just don't. And there's a model for this. Back in the 80s, all the building societies set up estate agents as an excuse to control the customer for the cross-sell to mortgages and insurances. I thought, why not just do that with a modern twist? You know, Purple Bricks and Open Rent have proven that people are very comfortable self-serving to sell or rent out their home. But we definitely don't want to pay. I mean, it doesn't feel right. And there's this model, you know, you make decent commissions from mortgage lenders, helping people get a mortgage. And you know, the funny thing is, Rightmove has 85% of the buyer traffic in the UK. So if you set up the ability to create a listing in just 5 minutes from your phone, we get 20 buyer inquiries saying, can we view this home? And obviously, we book the viewing in so that you, as our customer, get a really good experience selling your home. But those buyers also need a mortgage. And so it's a really good excuse to say, by the way, in just a few minutes, we can show you how much every single lender on the market will lend to you. So you can confidently go and find a home. And we make decent commissions. We make £750 on the average mortgage in the UK, which is about £200 grand. And the model is just about adding so much value to people's lives on the seller side that they tell their friends and family.
Okay, so thank you. I think, you know, anyone who's bought a property knows the pain of mortgages. I think it's definitely something to, you know, be disrupted. I think there's an interesting point, by the way, as a more general one, which is, you know, I think people perceive often when starting a startup that the difficulty is building a technical implementation. And what they often miss is that the market is often set up in a particular way. And particularly a property is one where the Zooplas, the Rightmoves and so on own some part of the value chain, and just creating a technical solution may not get you any business. You have to somehow work out how you can be in that chain. And I often see that with SeedLegals, where people go, why don't you do X? You know, you can automate X. Now we kind of know equity, but whether it be property or many other areas, maybe doctors connect with patients through the NHS, and just saying we're going to make some medical thing, it may turn out that 0 people use it because everyone goes through some insurer or NHS or something like that. So the advice to anyone watching this is, if you do want to disrupt an existing industry, you need to not just create a solution and hope people come, but see how that plugs into the value chain. And maybe with that in mind, it's now time to switch on screen sharing and have a look, because I think I got the proposition from what you said. And of course, with a title like Free, it's attracting on the promise of something, but we don't yet know precisely what it is. Think free, not fee. Okay, so that's clearly got my attention. I don't know what it's got my attention on yet, but it's got my attention. So you're the best person to sell your home. All right. So this takes me to the next thing that I often tell startups, which I love that you've totally gotten, which is often startups will have a pitch deck that is trying to have a message for investors about sort of what they do, but they fail to explain. They have a proposition that shows investors everything about how they're doing something, but fails to explain why anyone would want it. And you've taken the opposite approach. You've said this deck, actually, as we go through it, is almost a slide deck designed for the consumer, which incidentally, you're letting your investor see. So that might confuse investors slightly, but for me, I think it's much more valuable, because otherwise, as an investor, you're telling me all about blockchain and this and that, and I'm going, yeah, this is all very well. Why does anyone care? So by starting with why someone wants it, if the investor wants this as an individual, oh yeah, next time I sell my house, this is a place, then they'll go, well, everyone else is going to want it. I'm going to be in as well. So I like the way you've started here. Of course, it's slightly non-traditional, but let's keep going. Okay, so next. All the buyers are on Rightmove. So I think if you've said this in your deck, so now you've jumped from, of course, the consumer, why somebody would want it, to now something that's really sort of inside goss for an investor, because a consumer wouldn't see this. They would go, oh, I'm just going to go to Rightmove. So by mentioning this, of course, you now need to explain on the coming pages why you've got this problem sorted, or you've shown me a problem that in my mind, I've got a little sort of post-it note. We need to get back to this point later. So let's see whether you cover that later. Okay, so all the buyers on Rightmove, post Rightmove from your phone. Okay, so you're going to be integrating this presumably with Rightmove. As an investor, I'm thinking, do you have to have a deal with Rightmove? Are they something that they can block if you get too big? So what is the answer on that, if you can say?
Yeah, we're just another agent like any other, and all agents pay Rightmove a membership fee based on the number of listings they have.
Okay. All right. So there's no strategic deal that you have or need to have in order for this to happen. Okay. So now you've got your staging URL at the bottom, which obviously tells me that you're not quite live yet. My thought would be, obviously, if it would not have the word staging in it, it would be more powerful. So what's the delta between where you are now and being live?
About 3 days.
Okay. All right. Cool. So by the time you're watching this, you can probably just go to free.co.uk. All right. Excellent. So it's always nice when, of course, it looks like it's the live thing. Even if you did put the live URL on here, by the time the investor gets to look at it, in this case, you may well be live. So
can I challenge you on that for a second?
Sure.
So I find with fundraising that it's more about momentum than where you are at a point in time. And if you can create momentum in someone's mind, then you create more of the urgency to do something with you, to commit. And so I quite like holding stuff back, and there's lots on this that I have held back, so that I have the second and the third thing that I can show them in the next month to make them think, wow, these guys are making ridiculous progress. We really need to jump.
Okay, so I love your thinking, and I agree completely. I think for me, as an investor, you can hardly ever tell whether something is truly a good idea or not. I want to make a GPS-enabled, Wi-Fi controlled bicycle lock. It's like, is it a good idea or not? Nobody knows. So what everyone's doing is you're looking for bits of signal amongst the noise to say, is this standing out? So what I would look to do is to get as many articles as you can online, so that when the investor does some Googling, they start seeing you guys are everywhere. Make sure there's stuff in their LinkedIn feeds. The people that they might be following on Twitter, see if you can get something to appear in their Twitter feed. And once your name starts appearing in several different places, then they will perceive there's action happening. Obviously, once you've got revenue, you can show a chart of growth. But until then, you need to make that noise. So your technique, which I think is really clever, is to say, I will give you something now, and then I will hitch up later with more. Now, obviously, that sort of temporal approach isn't shown on the deck because you're just showing me on day one, but I think it's a very cool technique. So there's, for your pitch deck clinic, there's some sage advice from Ray. Okay, so next slide. Sellers need listings to get viewings. Sellers need listings. Okay. Who need mortgages? This is how we make money. Okay, so we've slightly complicated messaging in a newspaper style font. So it looks like the headline, and then how we make money. Okay, cool, because of course at this point the word free is used so many times. I'm thinking that's very nice, but how are you making money? Okay, so I'm never quite sure when one mixes metaphors. So of course you've now jumped into salmon fishing. I don't know if I like salmon fishing. I'm thinking of streams in Scotland. You've got me diverted slightly. I usually tell people, use the analogy of, fishing further upstream, in lead acquisition and so on. So I get the salmon thing. It is a slight punt as going on a diversion here, but I think your deck is filled with that. So we'll buy in there. Okay, so now we're looking at how the stream goes. So you've got renters, then you come in. I think you might find that once you talk about the stream, then there's an upstream and downstream. It might be clearer just to go with the flow of, buyer wants to do stuff. Thought maybe a persona of there's Sally wants to buy a home. At the end, home bought. Where do we come in? Could be another way of doing this that might avoid take me on a diversion with fishing and keep me close to it. But, hey, it's got personality, so it's a fun thing to do. We now get to the, I guess, how it works, the screenshots, what the viewer sees. Cool. So I've been waiting for this. So these probably look like they're going to be, well, they are phone screenshots in a sense, or mock-up screenshots. Sometimes people stick a phone around it. I think the phone doesn't really add value. I see often people have got the little cutout at the top of the iPhone X. That's so going to age badly. So that's really a bug in the phone rather than a feature. Everyone jumps on to go, it's the most modern phone, but actually I prefer not. So, and you've got a sort of suitable mock-up here, which is, it doesn't show the time of date or the carrier that you're on. Great, because that was noise. But it, showing the hamburger menu in the back button makes it look like, I'm looking at an actual screenshot. And as a technical person, I would probably say this also means that it's a mobile responsive rather than an app. So, and as the product person, I would say that putting some menu items in a hamburger menu sometimes is good and sometimes is challenging. If the main functionality is all available from the main page, then putting settings and profile in the hamburger menu is great. But otherwise, if you put main things in the hamburger menu, you may find lower engagement because people don't click the hamburger menu. And I'm saying this because I've been there and done that and wrote an article on hamburger menus a few years ago. So
funny story here. Sorry to interrupt you, Anthony. There's nothing behind the hamburger menu. It's just there from the UX person as a standard thing. And so they're about to remove it. And when I first built this app 7 years ago for estate agents, against the better advice of my developer, I got him to actually put a hamburger icon there.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Thanks for the hamburger icon backstory. The hamburger icon that just says, thanks for clicking here. All right.
And did not age well.
Right. All right. So this is where the slide we get to that jumps from the promise to the what it is. So let's take a look and jump in piece by piece. So you've got 4 screenshots here, and you've got something on the side. This page is quite busy. Previous pages were generally quite simple, and the question then is, are we overloading this page? But let's unpick it piece by piece. So on the left, you've got, you can offer a 5-minute mortgage. So you've got key features, I guess, for how it works. And you mentioned a phone call. Okay, so now we can look through the app, and ideally when we look through this from the perspective of an investor, they should see only the upside, not the friction, hopefully. So let's see what comes out. So select your viewing. So presumably I've picked a property first, so maybe we might have had a screen that shows some, house. You click on it. So I don't know how the user knows which houses are your houses or not, but maybe that doesn't matter. So now you pick a viewing time. Okay. So this is the buyer's proposition, not the seller's proposition. So it took me a little work to get there. I probably should have worked it out from the first screen, but maybe the title is, the proposition for the buyer.
Yep, how it works.
All right, so your mortgage in principle. I'm not quite sure what principle means, but okay.
Also, it's a typo.
Right, yes, okay, indeed, yes. All right, monthly outgoings. Okay, so you're going to calculate how much I can borrow in just a few lines, which was much faster than the bank would have done that. Edit your application. Okay. All right, so I'm assuming that after selecting the bank, there will be some calls from the bank afterwards, or I'll need to do the usual amount of bank application stuff afterwards, right? So in the space I see on buses going by, there is tussle, something or other. Obviously, they need to work better on that branding. They seem to do this comparison. So how do you differ from them?
From this point, we use technology to get people through the full mortgage application without needing to speak to someone. And that's a primary difference. So if you use a mortgage broker, including, Trussell, it's about 5 hours elapsed over 5 weeks to get a mortgage application filled in. And you don't have a choice. You have to go down the route of speaking to someone on the phone. The FCA changed the regulations around that at the beginning of this year. And so we're optimizing the journey for someone who is happy self-serving. And then if they need help, it's available on the phone if they want it from a regulated mortgage broker.
Okay, cool. All right, so my thought from this is you've got probably, I said 2 things, you've actually got 3 things happening. 1, you've got on the left-hand side some explain of the process. 2, you've got a bunch of screenshots showing a user journey. And 3, you've got some little links for disclaimers and lists of fees and so on. I think those are clearly needed on the consumer proposition. I'm not sure that they are really needed on the deck, or maybe you can put that as a, it might be there, but it is a bit of a distraction. And were I to click on the link, I'd then be off on a completely different journey. Okay, so next slide. So this slide, we have changed I guess, direction slightly, and we've got the relax. We're over the hard work of the phone stuff. You've now got a pretty picture. Minor thing, by the way, when you put pictures on there, you might want to edit the metadata, because sticky beaks like me, or if you've got mouse overs, I can see this is from Unsplash, which is great. So you've got a free Creative Commons image. You didn't nick someone's image. That's great. But everything that's not the key message is a distraction. Okay, sure. So 33% of mortgage buyers take insurance. Okay, so the reason you're showing me this is presumably some upside on the business model, that you're also selling insurance as well. I think you've gotten me to do some work to figure that out. I think it might have been signposted in a way that somehow shows a journey of the things you're going to offer. In
Right.
one of the earlier slides, you've mentioned it's a complete service proposition. Maybe there is some sort of color-coded bar at the top, almost like, sort of breadcrumb trail or something, or a progress bar, showing that, step one is, in yellow is something for the seller. Then step two in blue is the buyer. Then after the sale, these other things. And now you're showing me perhaps it's part of a continuum rather than a ad hoc set of things. All right, so there's going to be insurance sold. Now we're switching tack completely, which is about your growth mechanism, which is that the buyers are going to tell their friends rather than, for example, the sellers. Okay, so one listing, 20 buyers. Okay, I think this one needs some work. It's probably not going to, as a standalone slide, I probably am not understanding it. So I can see that as a buyer, if I love the proposition, I'm going to tell my friends. I don't quite see how the buyer inquiries come into this. I don't know if you want to explain it now or it's not necessary, but either way, I think that if the goal of the slide is to be standalone as opposed to you talking over it, then I think it probably needs a bit of work to make it stand out.
Yeah, so I did have some text explaining that buyers often have a home to sell, and if we can get their homes listed with us, that gets us yet more buyers.
Got it. So that's the clincher that was missing here. And I think that, had the heading saying buyers also have a home to sell, that's our viral angle, then I think, you've got it. I assume that's a viral coefficient of, is that 1 or is it 2? So if for one purchase, you get one sale as well.
Would you say talking about a viral coefficient would resonate with investors? Because I did have that, but I removed it because a lot of the lay people that I tested these slides with said, I don't understand what a viral coefficient is.
Yeah, well, these days viral means something else as well. But I think the viral proposition, particularly in a market that isn't used to it, is fantastic. So, one of the key things investors are always going to be asking is what's your customer acquisition cost and what's your lifetime value and so on. But when it comes to the customer acquisition cost, in insurance and so on, companies are routinely spending £70 to £300 per customer acquisition. So if you're charging £750, then a customer acquisition cost of $250 is quite high. So if you can show that it has a viral piece to it, that's hugely powerful. So yes, I think the viral, I think that's, by the way, key on any proposition. Now, if you're making a social network, it lives or dies by it being viral. If you have something that generates revenue, then the virality isn't necessarily critical because you can pay to acquire users, but the less you have to pay because users tell each other about your service, the better it is. So my advice is for sure amp up the viral factor, and maybe show a sort of, you could even show it as a virtuous circle, which is, buyer needs to sell, that leads to another one, and so on. I think the issue on this slide is it's just not quite clear what's happening. Okay, so now we're changing tack again, I think, which is agents sell mortgages. So you've told me a couple of slides ago about the mortgage piece, then we switched to insurance, and then we switched to virality, but now we're back to mortgages, which means to me one of two things. Either this slide belongs a few slides earlier, or it's a different proposition. Can you tell me what we're looking at here?
Yeah, so I think the flow is just a bit muddled, and I need to think about how someone is feeling as they're going through this, and the story they're getting should link up well or better than it currently does.
Okay, and I think you're really combining two different stories. One of them is the journey for buyers and sellers, and secondly, the proposition of things that will earn revenue for you. And do you package them all, you know, stuff for the user and stuff for us, or do you link the two, you know, commingle? This I don't know the answer on, obviously. I think on this slide, what's missing, however, is what's in it for you. So this is nice data, great, the market, they do these things, but where's, you know, Free's angle on this? Okay, so now we come to your customer acquisition cost, presumably, and this is of course the perfect grouping for the virality slide. So I think with the viral slide to come after this to show why your customer acquisition cost is so much lower than the others, for example, then that would be, you know, complete the story on that. I think I think you've got quite a lot happening on this. So you're showing, number one, in the matrix, the revenue model for you and your competitors. Then on the right, you are explaining some stuff. And on the bottom left, you've got some sort of, we have to tell you these risk messages, which you've imprinted on my mind. Stuff on the bottom left is, you know, the T's and C's. So I think that, yeah, anytime you're drawing my eye to several different things on the page, given that, you know, data from, I think, well, some of the things, the services that do eye tracking on pitch decks suggest that people spend about 3 minutes and 14 seconds on a pitch deck. So you really want to make sure that after 3 minutes, 14 seconds, the person's got the gist of it, and don't need to spend that, you know, per page, because you'll lose them pretty quickly. So, all right, so now we come to the traditional market opportunity. So the flow of a deck is normally going to be, I mean, in my mind, number one, you know, in a sound bite, what it is. Number two, in more detail, what it is. Number three, you know, what the market opportunity is and how you're different to your competitors. I think maybe before that, some detail about how it works and so on. And then you get to, you know, the team and more. So now we've got the market opportunity. It might be the right place for it. I think let's assume it's the right place for it. Maybe it was beforehand, because before we got into the mechanics of who's earning what, maybe I should know beforehand what the opportunity is. I think in the case of you know, if you were making dialysis machines or something, I'd probably want to know what the market size is. I think on real estate, you don't need to tell me that it's a giant market. So, you know, it's in fact, if anything, I'm probably going to think the numbers would be larger than the ones I've got here. So you may think, all right, so now you've actually, you know, piqued my interest, because you've said the sell by owner market is small. I probably wouldn't have known that at all. I would just go, there's a lot of real estate sold, but thanks for telling me that. All right, so we now come to the team, and in particular, if you've been around as a founder, then it's often, you know, about you. And so I like the fact that, you know, there's no holds barred. I think by the way, the branding on this is slightly different to the other slides. I think clearly, you know, for an investor looking to invest, they're always, as I said, trying to pick out the signal from the noise. And the signal could be traction, revenue, if you're later stage. But if it's earlier stage, it's either something about the technology or the team or the founders. And of course, the most investable things right at the beginning are the founders. People who've had successful exits can raise investment even before they've said exactly what it is. So that's good. I think the mentioning your mother makes it personable. I'm not sure it's fun. It's a bit random, right? It's the first deck I've ever seen where someone's mentioned their mother. So
I think definitely more people should mention them up.
All right, you heard the Serum Pitch Deck Clinic. All right, this slide, I don't think does it for me. So I think the problem with this slide is that you're trying to tell me that this gives you a competitive advantage. That would be the only reason for having the slide here. But instead, what you might be telling me is I shouldn't be investing at all because the recession is here. And so you may find that net, it's a downer for me as an investor, reminding me that keep your money in your wallet and play safe. So I think you might want to think about rejigging this to say, in tough times, people are looking to save more or something like that. Yeah, and by the way, that's exactly the same with SeedLegals, compared to a law firm. Our fees are a lot less. And in fact, we've seen our market share in business increase over the past months because people want to, make sure they spend very wisely. And I would be looking to make sure this is purely focused as a positive for the consumer rather than seen as a negative for the investor. Okay, so I think here we've got a slight change in branding. It's gone very dark. The dark looks slightly ominous. I'm not sure the purpose for it. And the bit in the middle it's not like a phone, it's not like a tablet, it's a doorway. Oh, okay, so it's a banner ad on a bus shelter on a dark night. All right, so I had to work hard to figure that one out. I'm guessing that's a composite because you don't, it's too brightly lit to actually be on a bus shelter. But you're going to show me, so what you're trying to say is that you're going to be ubiquitous. It's going to be one of those things that will be on bus shelters in due course, and your name will be everywhere. I think the messaging here, our name is how much we charge, is clever, but you started the deck with a consumer message. I think maybe you should end it with the same consumer message, list your house for free or something like that, because I think this is maybe trying to be slightly too clever as opposed to using it to reiterate the story, the imprinting that you did at the beginning. I think also by mentioning Rightmove's name, you add a bit of confusion. Does this mean you partnered with them and so on? I think if it's just free.co.uk and list your home in 5 minutes, I don't think, I don't think you need to say more, is my thought on that. All right, so I think the last thing then is that a deck normally, I would suggest, ends with, what do you want? So I would normally expect the last slide to go, contact Ray at free.co.uk, raising X amount, offering EIS, and now I know what to do next. So you've probably done a great job of getting me excited and then left me looking at the bus shelter, which might be the wrong metaphor as well. So with that, I'm going to switch off screen sharing. So which thoughts did you have? Any things to go through together?
Yeah, no, that was phenomenally helpful. Like, when you're doing these things, you just spend so long with them that you miss obvious things. Like, the flow is very clearly muddled. It's not giving the user an easy flow through it. I clearly haven't thought enough about the changes in the look and the feel from bit to bit. The bit at the end, it's basic stuff. Here's my contact details. This is what we're looking for, and this is how you can help.
So what I'm amazed is, there are lots of articles on writing, creating the perfect pitch deck and so on. But what I love about Pitch Deck Clinic is it's only when you dissect an actual one that you see all the things. And even when you're talking to a seasoned pro who's clearly, genius at these things, I'm delighted that you can then pick out other things. And having done decks myself, you go through it, you think, this is awesome. And you often don't even need feedback from someone else. As you're going through the deck with someone, you can just see the look, or even so, you can just know the next slide, I'm going to lose you. I don't know what I was thinking at the time. It's just wrong. There's a terrible joke on the next slide, whatever it is. So I think one of the key things then is, for anyone watching this, is road test your slide deck on somebody, your partner, a friend. Get on a Zoom call and go through it. And many of the things that, in retrospect were quite obvious will just jump out as you do that. And I think often also people, we all read about A/B testing our products, but we don't think about A/B testing our slide decks. Take it as read that you should update it after every investor pitch session. Take the feedback from the investor. Now, sometimes, it'll take you in circles because everyone gives you different feedback. So, make sure that, you're amassing more data points so you get to something coherent, and then you'll decide on each one, this investor's an outlier, I'm just never going to go down that route. Or, actually, I've heard this 2 or 3 times, I really should, now improve it. Because ultimately, think about it as a sort of landing page on your website. On your website, you've got 1,000 people clicking on it, and you're going to see my bounce rate or my click-through rate is 33%. With investors, obviously the number is a lot smaller, and they don't tell you as clearly as a website visitor who in 30 seconds arrives or disappears. The investor goes, that's awesome, yeah, keep me posted. And then you go, well, I don't know what that really means. So, if you can try and treat it as, sort of web page testing, that would be fantastic. Any questions you have for me?
No, I think you've been super comprehensive. What I would say is that last comment about not getting clear feedback. I've had some people who've given me really clear, amazingly useful feedback, and I'm so grateful to them, especially considering they're not investing, right? To have taken the time. The ones that go, yeah, great, keep in touch, not helpful at all. Like I know why they say it, but as an entrepreneur, we build things that are born to fail. And any little bit of help we can get along the way helps us to try and find a path to success.
And I think that's one of the clear things that we all frequently hear from founders is, I wish we'd get clear feedback from investors. Dude, if you're in, fantastic. If you're out, please tell me why. I think the reason that investors don't often provide clear feedback is because actually they don't really know why they're not in. And I think that comes down to me to nobody knows early on whether an idea is a good idea or not, right? It's going to take off based on a combination of perseverance, being able to build it, luck, being in the right place at the right time, any range of things. And so the investor's making a bet, and the bet is going to be based, they would like to think, objectively on data in the slides. I'm going to take the business model, the market opportunity, the rev share, the customer acquisition cost, run it through my Excel model and see what the valuation is. In reality, it's, seems like a nice guy, but, a bit crazy on the graphics, and, I'm not sure, I bought a house. And so there's all these sort of random things. And as a result, they don't really know why they're in or they're out. And because of that, they're embarrassed and can't really articulate it. I mean, you can't really go, well, it looks cool, but I just kind of couldn't be fucked. So, and I think that really is the reason. And unfortunately, it's not helpful for the founder, but you can't blame the investor, because what you're asking for is a big commit. They're going to write out a check, if it's an angel investor, of their own money, for, you know, tens or hundreds of thousands of pounds if it's a fund. And the bar is quite high for that. So if they can't rise to that, can they actually give a good reason, or is it simply I couldn't quite rise to that? Is a good point. So we'll cut some slack to an investor, but it would be great if you are an investor, of course, if you were able to give objective feedback. And you know, on the other hand, it's a sort of a bittersweet thing as a founder when your investor tells you 8 reasons they didn't invest. You go, thanks for taking the time. I don't know if I really wanted to know that. So.
No, actually, you know what? If you think about it, right? As an investor, you make your living off of deal flow. As a founder, I'm referring other founders to investors all the time. I'm now going to refer to those people I know are going to take care of that founder. Whether they invest or not, they're going to take care of them. They're not going to waste that opportunity to help that person get further in their career.
I think that's a great point. And actually, by the way, when people do ask me for, you know, really great VCs to talk to, the ones I mention, apart from the ones that invested in SeedLegals, in fact, include the ones who didn't, because they gave me great feedback and I had great meetings with them, and they came by to meet the team and, you know, kick the tires and ask the right questions. And actually, some of the investors I think were the best are the ones that did not just want to talk to the founders and look at our spreadsheets on customer acquisition costs, but actually meet the team and sit with our growth team, or our CTO, or our devs, ask what they're doing and see. And that gives, you know, firstly for the investor, a much better view of, you know, not just talking to the founder, but the rest of the team. And for the team, it's great because they've met a real person who actually cares, not just a bean counter. So we've completely gone on a tangent here, but hey, there's some fine things for investors as well. Anyway, Ray, it was fab talking. Thank you very much. I think you've got your work cut out on your SEO. Free is a tough one to do. I love the domain name that you've got. I'm looking forward to see it on bus shelters soon, so, and everywhere else. Thank you. And of course, if anyone wants to get involved, you know, it's just ray@free.co.uk. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, great.